I'm Sienna Craig. I'm an anthropologist who teaches and works at Dartmouth College. I'm a medical anthropologist, so I focus on, generally speaking, cross-cultural approaches to health and illness, global health, women's and children's health, and I work in Tibet and the Himalaya. I've been very fortunate in my career so far that I've had the opportunity to live and work in Lhasa and to be in the Tibet Autonomous Region, as well as in Qinghai Province, Tibetan area, and to have this long-standing relationship with Nepal. They're extremely different political climates and social worlds, really, but they also have a lot of similarities in terms of the challenges that are facing regions today. Living and working in Lhasa involves a fair amount of self-censorship and a navigation of daily life that always feels constrained. And yet there's so much creativity and wonderful work being done there as well. It's just that it's very understated. I felt very fortunate to be working in some of the premier Tibetan medical hospitals in China and to see the depth of knowledge of the practitioners there, as well as the real care and attention put forward toward the future of Tibetan medicine under great constraint. In Nepal, I would say the same is true, but they're working with different constraints. There, the doctors that I work with are struggling to be recognized in a state context that has historically marginalized them and the people and communities from which they come. And they are trying to figure out their own place in a shifting, not just political landscape, but an economic one. In both cases, there are questions about future generations. But I would say in Nepal, the questions about whether or not or in what way a new generation of practitioners will emerge is a more difficult one than in the Tibetan region, in part because in Tibet there are institutions that people can now belong to and imagine a career path in, whereas in Nepal that's much more difficult. Tibetan medicine is incredibly adaptive. There is, I would say, a core set of theoretical principles and texts that relate to those principles that stretch from the refugee communities in South India all the way to Mongolia, Buryatia, and into the West, and Tibetan doctors practicing there. So there is something that is shared or something that is communicable across all of these domains. And yet in each space where Sowa Rigpa, or the science of healing as it's often translated from the Tibetan, is practiced, there's a huge amount of variation in practices, variation in local lineage-based traditions that inform how practice is done, how medicines are made. And then there is, perforce, a huge amount of variation in the materia medica that is used. Tibetan medicine has a very complex and incredibly adaptive set of principles for how you substitute things. If you can't find X, well, you look for something that is Y, that has the same ro, or taste, and post-digestive taste, potency, and those things also can cross species as well. So you could have a plant that at the level of taste and potency is mimicked by an animal product or the other way around. In many ways, it is possible to be a trans-Himalayan doctor, to travel between worlds, really, between the Nepal or the Indian Himalaya and the Tibetan Plateau. But it is tricky, especially the translation or travel between India and China. People find spaces to meet. Doctors from Dharamsala and other areas of the Tibetan exile community and those from China have in recent years been able to come together in conference formats or in other settings and share notes, talk about their historical trajectories, talk about the common problems that they face, especially around the standardization of practice, of education, and the problems that are arising from the scaling up of industry around Tibetan medicine and what that means for the materia medica that the tradition depends on. Folks from Nepal, though, have, in some senses, more ability to move back and forth across the border, or at least they have. I've had many doctors from Nepal come and visit institutions in Lhasa and visit institutions in Xining, which is the capital of Qinghai province. But they are more constrained usually financially, and so that travel is dependent on a network of sponsorship and relationships that aren't quite as constraining as it is for colleagues in China. So on the one hand, Tibetan medicine is becoming a global commodity. It's very much a commodity in East Asia, and it's becoming much more so in Europe, in North America, and Japan. On the other hand, Tibetan medicine is still the front line of healthcare for many, many people across the Tibetan Plateau and the Himalaya, and there's a fair amount of dissonance in those two realities. In many ways, Tibetan medicine could be viewed as something that stitches a very large and very diverse community together. That said, the Tibetan medicine that you find in Ladakh is going to be quite different than the Tibetan medicine you find in Bhutan. But yes, there is a certain commitment to ways of viewing the body, ways of understanding what it means to be ill, why you get ill, which is, it's a very basic human set of principles and concerns, really, but it does provide a kind of vocabulary, both an embodied vocabulary and a spoken one and a written one that can, in many ways, provide a connection across this very diverse area. To be a Himalayan healer in a place like Mustang, Nepal, where I've worked now for many years, requires a huge array of skills and abilities. It's not just that you are capable of getting up at 4 a.m. because someone has come to call and their mother is sick, and you get on your horse and you ride off to help that person with your little bag of powders and pills. It's also that you come back from that early morning adventure and you sit down and you try with your nephew or your cousin to write an email in English to the sponsor who has paid for the new roof on your school, to communicate needs that go well beyond medicine. It also means that you have to wear many hats in the course of village life. You have to participate in all of the expected rituals and other daily roles that are required of you as, either a monk or a lay tantric household or priest in the context of Mustang. But you also have to be attentive to so many other needs and questions. You have to also be thinking about the future of the people that you're training and how different their world is and their professional and adult life will be from the world that you've grown up in and are quite comfortable navigating. One of the things I would really like to continue to pursue in my work over the coming decade or so is to try to track and understand and productively engage with communities and people that I've known now for many years from Nepal who are now living in places as nearby as New York and in other parts of the world, in other parts of South Asia, and to think with them about what it means to have a sense of translocal home at this point, that what this means for an aging population who now might have financial security, but might not have their family with them anymore. What this means for a new generation of young people who are growing up with an allegiance to a place like Mustang, but once or twice removed, how they understand their place in that place. And at the same time, my interest in these processes connect back to my core interests in health and illness. I'm very curious about what the future of Tibetan medicine will be in the places where I've been working for a long time, but also how people in places like New York navigate and make sense of health and illness issues in this very new set of circumstances.